development program. And we're having some trouble. Sorry that my voice sounds so annoying right now, but I think it will improve. So, welcome, David.
Thank you for the introduction, Dawn. And today, basically, I'm here to tell you about some of our different programs that we offer here at Oakland Community College, specifically in the Economic and Workforce Development Department. I'm going to start off just talking about some of the different things our staff does to work with companies and individuals to create training programs, professional development, and lifelong learning opportunities that result in a more professional and more effective workforce. One of the main things that our trainers are able to do is actually go to your workplace as well to do different types of training. They specialize in management, IT, and leadership, but they've got a catalog of over 3,000 different subjects that they can train your staff in. So once again, they partner with you to identify the training needs of the organization first. So that's always the first step. And as we've told everyone, cell phones. All right, so Joe is our point man. So if your company has just questions, I mean, there's always got to be a starting point to assess your needs. And so Joe Barmarito is someone you can speak with to have basically like an assessment meeting, and then he'll get you in contact with our subject matter expert when it comes to training, which is Tim Boone. So the first step, though, is to meet with Joe and get an idea of what some of your needs may be, and then he will get you in contact with Tim Boone. All right. Also, after that point, once they have looked at some of your needs, basically what they do is kind of propose a training solution that will be specific to your needs, and that's why we talk about customizing it. So we literally have over 100 different types of training situations currently going on. Provides opportunities for direct communication between instructors and clients. And some of the other samples of the customized training courses, computer and IT, professional leadership, process improvement, manufacturing technology and processes, vocational skill enhancement, and computer-aided design. Now we will discuss team building a little bit. We have a low ropes course, which, like I said, I don't know if some of you probably have already experienced some of our amazing team building, low ropes courses, and some of the other adventure exercises that our staff is able to do here on campus. Crest is the location where we have this, something like a synthetic village where they're able to, law enforcement all throughout Oakland County uses this facility for training. And then we also have, for harnessing the power of leadership, Leader Dogs for the Blind, which is based on communication, trust, and recognition, which basically are the foundations of a successful company as well as department. So the things that our training classes focus on are really the steps to success for a company in any industry. And if you are not looking at training for your company, that would mean that you're okay with where you are, and no one should ever be okay with where they are. They should always want to get better. And just to talk about our motorcycle safety courses, and so just so you know, and it's offered at some of the other colleges as well, but we do offer a motorcycle safety training course, which in order to run a motorcycle, you obviously have to take that course. So if anyone has any plans, dreams, goals, ambitions of riding motorcycles, please get in contact with us immediately. And that'll be it for now. Thank you very much. And Dawn, I will turn it back over to you.
So Erica is with True Design. She's making her way up here right now. She's going to talk to us a little bit about what they do at True Design, which is all of our videos. So when you see these professional, beautiful, edited videos with these invitations to come to these events, this is all done by True Design.
Those of you who have been to the Lunch and Learns have seen us in the background. We've done all of the Lunch and Learns with OCC. What we
vocational training site. So we utilize our services as a learning process to help train people in these digital fields. So all of the service as a result that we provide is completely free to the community because we are learning as we go and working with professionals to create that professional quality. We handle video, photography, graphic design, so definitely if you see anybody floating around, if anyone asks to take your picture, feel free to talk to us and let us know if you're interested in anything. We're happy to work with you, and thank you so much. I don't know if you heard, but True Design offers free video production, editing, everything completely free and no charge. They do ask for a good lag time notice because it is for training. So amazing, amazing product and service. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Roger Nordberg. He is our lunch sponsor. We have this wonderful meal because of him and his group called C12. And he's going to speak for the next 7 to 10 minutes, and then he'll introduce Davin, which we are excited to have our speaker today. Thank you.
It's a privilege to be here. It's even a better privilege to be able to introduce Davin here in a few minutes. But who am I? I'm a 30-year retiree from General Motors. That's not all that great as shakes, but I really did have a great career. I worked in materials management and lean manufacturing, and I retired in 2003 as a purchasing director. I joined a family business after that, and then I got a call to consider the C12 group, which is a peer advisory group that I'm going to talk to you about here in a minute. As the managing chair for C12 group here in north suburban Detroit, I'm currently working with 17 companies. They range from $1 million to about 40 million, and between them they have 430 or so employees, and they have a reach of 75,000 people when you consider their employees and families and customers and suppliers and other business associates. So that's pretty important when we get to part of what we want to talk about. But first I want to introduce what a peer advisory group is. Is there anybody here that isn't thinking in terms of continuous improvement? You want to grow in terms of your leadership skills or your management skills or just organizational development? Any of those things we need people that help us identify blind spots and so on. And so a peer advisory group is a group of like-minded folks that come together periodically, usually monthly, and spend time in continuing education and problem solving and those kinds of things. So if you are interested in getting some help, it's not as good as we think we are, and as good as we actually are, we all have blind spots, and we all need some people in our circle. So it's a safe place to talk about things that you can't talk about with your staff, or maybe even can't talk about with your family, and get good insight from a lot of people. The Bible says that in the multitude of counselors there is wisdom, and so that's really the fundamental behind why this works. Now it works in the church, but it also, of course, works in secular society. There are lots of peer advisory groups, so that's something you should look in. I guess my point is I want everybody to consider a peer advisory group. There are lots of peer advisory group types. Basically, they're industry specific and non-industry specific groups. And the reason you should consider joining is because of the great value that comes out of new ideas, identifying blind spots, and so on. So that's what a peer advisory group is. It's for everybody. C12 is not for everybody, but it might be for you. Let me show you a video here of our process. Okay. This is a graph showing the reasons why the current C12 members join C12. Incidentally, there's around 2,000 nationwide in C12. 32% are integrating their faith into their business better, again, because of peer influence around the table. We're working on improving our business. Again, good ideas around the table with peers. Get qualified advice from peers, and develop our leadership abilities, deploy ministry strategies in the business, increasing business knowledge, accountability, and work-life balance. So those are the kind of things that cause people to join C12. This one shows what they actually got, what they felt was improved as a result. 75% said leadership, personal leadership is better. Company culture has been improved. They're doing more ministry. They're better at strategic planning. Internal ministry, meaning employees, versus the ministry through the business would be to the community. Teams are better aligned. Work-life balance, performance, revenue growth, profitability. So there's lots of value in being around other people that are like-minded. As I said, C12 isn't for everybody, but we'd like to talk to everybody. So just be aware. Now the most important part of the presentation is introducing to you my friend Davin Savano. He's an educator and speaker, field director, and you've got his full bio in your, there's a handout on your table, but he's a growth and development director for Northwestern Mutual in Troy. He's a public educator and coach, and he served in executive roles in human resources, marketing, for 3 Fortune 100 companies over the past years. So he's been a good friend to me over the last most of a year, I guess, and a fellow C12 member. So welcome, Davin, please.
Good afternoon. Excellent. It's always good to be able to up here and follow eating lasagna. I'm sure you guys will be asleep about 15 minutes into my presentation. If that happens, the person next to you, just give the person a nudge or just take the lasagna away from them if they're still eating it. So this is me and the zoomed scruffle headshot. I love that. It's fantastic. So as Roger mentioned, I currently am the Growth and Development Director for Northwestern Mutual in Michigan, in Troy. Prior to that, if you were here last month, you heard a little bit of the background. I worked in executive roles for 3 Fortune 500 companies, actually Fortune 10 companies over the last 15 years. So the corporate world was great, but I felt that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to chase significance as opposed to success. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So a little bit about me and my background. This is my family. So that's my wife, Amy, my daughter, Vera, my son, Bennett, and we were married in 2007. We became clients of Northwestern Mutual in 2008 when I realized I needed some basic things to take care of my family. And they treated me well over that time frame, and I built a really great relationship with our managing partner. And I decided I was going to start a consulting firm a couple years ago. He and I sat down for lunch. And after a great conversation with him, he said, I got a different idea. How about you come on board here, be our company's growth and development director, and you can help both families and businesses, and we could talk about what that looks like. So that was 2 years ago, and 2 years later, here I am. So I was appointed growth and development director in 2017. And then as Roger mentioned, this year I joined the C12 group. I've known Roger for a couple years. I actually thought about starting a C12 group and becoming a chair a couple years ago prior to joining NM. And one day I might still just do that, Roger. But for right now, I know that this is where I'm planted. So how did we get to today? So I was going to be a high school teacher. How many of you remember being in high school and being asked, what are you going to do with your life? Anybody remember that? How many of you knew that answer back in high school? You knew what you were going to be. Raise your hand. Okay. Who's just not going to raise their hand no matter what I say today? All right. Got you. All right. Awesome. So keep your hands raised if you knew what you were going to be. How many of you, keep them up, how many of them are in that role today? Wow. 2, That's impressive. That's fantastic. So we often have an idea of what we're going to be, and then life takes a little bit of a different course, right? We have our plan, this is where we're going to be, and then life happens, right? So I was going to be a teacher, and the reason why was not because I wanted summers off. It wasn't because I wanted holidays off. It definitely wasn't for the pay, because we know that we pay our teachers an incredible amount of money, right? I wanted to be a teacher because there were a couple teachers that made an impact on my life when I was young. And I remember seeing them in a grocery store and going up to them and saying, Mr. Smith, how you doing? It was like, when you met your teacher outside of school, that was an amazing moment. It was like, I know him. He's my teacher, right? It was exciting. You caught a glimpse of who they were outside of the classroom. And I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be that guy that people saw and were excited to meet because, not because I had a fancy title, but because I somehow impacted or influenced their life. That's why I wanted to be a teacher. But it was not to be. So what happened? So I was raised in Philadelphia, Super Bowl champions. I have to throw that in there every time I say Philadelphia, and I've been waiting for that for 38 years. So I get to say that now. So I was raised in Philadelphia. I moved here my senior year of high school. So my parents got divorced at a very young age. I was 5. My sister was 1. There was this vicious custody battle. I went to go live with my grandparents, my Italian grandparents. Thank you for the lasagna today, whoever made that decision. And they raised me for a period of time. I had everything going for me. Despite what had happened in our family, I had perfect attendance in school 10 out of 11 years going into my junior year of high school. Perfect attendance. I had a 4.0. I was in all the advanced classes, advanced calculus, which to this day I've never used. All of those different things. And then due to an ugly fight and some things that happened, my mother decided that she was moving us to Michigan during my senior year of high school. And I was not yet 18, so I did not have a choice about that matter. And so I had this dream of going to Penn State, where I was going to, have a phenomenal college 4 years, come back out. I am still a Penn State fan. And then I was going to be a teacher. So I get dragged here, was very embittered. I missed 37 days of school my senior year of high school, and I finished with a 2.86. It was an awful year. So, like most, I went to a community college instead of Penn State, and I got a job working at Cooker Bar and Grill, which is no longer around. It was my first job in Michigan. I went in and I became a host, and then I became an expo, and I did all these things in the kitchen, and this is back in 1998. And, I noticed something while I was there. There were people wearing white name badges, and there were people wearing gold name badges. And the white name badges had their name, their sticker on there, so that the turnover in the restaurant industry is real. Any of you ever work in the restaurant industry? Right? Turnover is extremely high in the restaurant industry, right? And so they had the sticky ones because you can just peel that off, reuse the name tag, and stick somebody else's name on there, right? Different server this week than last week. But then there was the gold ones, and those names were embossed. And I was like, wow. What's with the fancy gold name badges? Why the embossed? Well, those were the managers. And so I remembered asking, who are the gold badges? And they go, oh, those are our leaders. And I'm like, oh, our leaders, that sounds impressive. I want one of those. So I decided that I wanted to become a manager. And I've been there for 2 weeks. I know nothing about the restaurant business. I know nothing about what I'm doing. All I know is I wanted a fancy gold name badge. That's all I wanted. But I wasn't going to tell them that, right? So there was an assistant manager there. His name was Dwight. And he was up front, and one day, and I said, Dwight, I want to be a manager. How do I become a manager? And he says to me, why do you want to be a manager? I said, well, because I want to be a leader. And he goes, well, being a manager and being a leader are two very different things. That was a wise statement from an assistant general manager of a restaurant. Not that I'm diminishing that role, but that was a very wise statement at that point in time. I said, how are they different? He goes, well, let's start with being a manager first, and then we can work on you being a leader. So he walks over to the bar. The bar's over here, and he grabs a bev nap. You guys know what a bev nap is? Okay, those of you who don't, you're going to know in a little bit, because this is going to be an interactive talk today. So he grabs the bev nap, and he hands that bev nap over to me, and he asked me to take out a pen, and I take out a pen, and I give him the pen, and he writes down 5 things on this bev nap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He says, do these 5 things, and when you're done, come see me, and you can be a manager. I said, okay. So I took that bev nap. I was real proud. I folded it up. I put it in my pocket. I went home excited that day because I had my first plan, my first IDP. Anybody know what an IDP is? Anybody work in HR? Okay. So I had my first individual development plan, and I was really excited about this. It was 5 things written on a bev nap, and I went home that day and I studied it, and I came back to work the next day invigorated, and as I'm walking up the steps to the restaurant, I pulled that thing out of the pocket. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do these 5 things today. And that's all I thought about all day long. So a week later, I finished the 5 things. I go knock on the office door. I say, Dwight, I did the 5 things. He says, all right, let me finish closing the restaurant, and then you and I will have a conversation. So I sat patiently rolling silverware. How many of you guys worked in the restaurant business? Who remembers rolling silverware? Fun times, had by all. All right, so I'm rolling silverware, and I just kept on looking in the door going, man, is he done yet? Is he done yet? And he comes out, and he goes, sits down and says, let's have a conversation. So the first thing he said was that he applauded me on taking my development seriously and wanting to do something better for myself. The second was that I was open to feedback, and that the third is I did something with that feedback. And on that alone, with no experience, I became a manager. Not because of experience, but because of coachability and my desire to improve myself. So I left the restaurant business in 2001 after opening several restaurants. I went to go work for Costco wholesale. I became a marketing manager for them. And in case you haven't noticed, I'm very quiet and shy and don't like to talk. In fact, my parents said, you're either going to be a teacher or a lawyer, one of those two. I ended up being neither. But I love teaching, and I get to do that through this venue. And while I was at Costco, I got obsessed with kind of their model and what they were doing. So very quickly, I became an ambassador of what they do, and they asked me to be a marketing manager. So I became a marketing manager for them for 7 years. I was going to school to finish my teaching degree, but they offered me double a teacher's salary my senior year of college. And so I decided to kind of put a pin in the teaching thing and say, okay, I'm 21 years old, and I'm getting double a teacher's salary. I'm single. Let's go travel the world. So I went that route. And then just kind of got caught up in corporate America. So from marketing manager at Costco Wholesale, I was playing hockey with the vice president of Macy's, and he had been trying to recruit me for years. Eventually, I worked for them, and I ran stores for Macy's in Michigan. And then 2008 happened. Everybody remember 2008? That was a great year, right? So not only did the bottom fall out and the world fall apart, short of Armageddon, but that was the initial retail tip of the iceberg, which we are now officially seeing the effects of. And I realized I needed to get out of retail. I had to get off the Titanic. And so I started looking at options because Macy's was already starting to take on some water. And CVS came knocking, and they said, we'd like you to become a district manager for us. So I said, well, that's pharmacy. It's retail, but it's pharmacy. It's kind of healthcare. It's probably a little bit more stable. So I went to go work at CVS. I spent 5 years in the operations role and then transitioned into the HR role. And the reason why is initially, as a DM, I was a coach of stores. And as times progressed, I became more of what I felt was being kind of a police officer of stores, making sure that we were doing things the right way and not really finding the moments to be able to coach and teach like I wanted to. And my heart was kind of being a teacher, being a business coach. But I found in the HR world you could do that, so I became an HR business partner for them. And then I found out that in that world, that was more about compliance and keeping the company out of trouble and less about developing people. And I said, well, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And so that was a drastic change for me because I realized I had to make a decision between something that was very stable, paid the bills, had a great salary, it was a well-recognized company, and I had to decide, was I going to sacrifice who I am, what I want to be, what's important to me for security, or do I want to give up some of that security to chase who I was made to be and be able to make the impact that I wanted to make? So, Brad, a good friend of mine at Northwestern Mutual, and I sat down and I talked to him about this consulting firm idea. He thought it was a great idea. And he said, before you go in this direction, I want to throw something at you. And he said, you have operations, marketing, human resources, but you don't really have a whole financial background. And if you're going to help business owners be successful, you probably should understand the financial things. Now, I knew how to manage a P&L. I ran operations. I got all that. But I knew nothing about business planning, insurance, tax liabilities. I knew nothing about that. He said, why don't you become a financial advisor? And then you'll understand that world. And then we have 25 CFPs in our office. You can kind of make your own team. We'll make you our growth and development director. And then you could still go out and do consulting and teaching and all these other things. But now you can help families and businesses and connect them to the right resources to grow with. Said, sounds like a great idea. So we did that, and that's how we got here today. So I tell you all of that background because it is important for you to understand how someone without a four-year degree, and I don't say this boastfully, by the way. I'm extremely humbled to have been able to provide for my family. My wife hasn't worked in 6 years. She stays at home with our kids. I'm home every night by 6 o'clock with them. We eat dinner as a family every single night. Every weekend, we are doing stuff with family. At CVS, I was bringing my laptop home, waiting for the kids to go to bed. I couldn't wait until they got to go to bed so I can just try to clean out my inbox and hope to get to sleep by midnight. In 2 years, I have not taken my laptop into my home, and I have not worked on a Saturday and Sunday. And I am very thankful for that. So how did we get here? Thank you. Thank you. And I say that, again, I don't say that to boast. I say that because there are those of you sitting in this room right now that are struggling with, I want to have better work-life balance, but I have to provide. And so you have made certain sacrifices, either at home or in your career, to find that balance. And if you get anything out of my talk today, whether it's around employee development or yourself, I want you to walk out of here with one thing, and that's the resolve of what's the one thing that I've sacrificed that I shouldn't have, and do something about that after you leave here today. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about identifying leadership potential with others. So how did someone who didn't have a 4-year degree go through that chain of command, I guess you could say, and end up where we are today? An assistant general manager of a restaurant saw potential in me when I was 18 years old, 20 years ago, and took time out of his schedule to do something about it. He wrote down 5 simple things and said, do these things, and he believed in me. And then you can have what you want. And I trusted him. There was a level of, he had nothing to gain from it, but there was a level of genuine interest from him and a level of trust in me for him to take that step. And that changed how I forever thought about leadership. So I want to ask you, how do you identify the potential that's within yourself? So some of you are business owners, some of you work for companies, some of you are self-employed. So if you have a business, how do you identify the potential that's on your team? And if you don't have a business or you don't work for a company, you're not in charge of people, and you're just by yourself, how do you identify what potential still is within inside you that you have kind of stuck on the shelf and sacrificed because you got caught up doing whatever you're doing? And what are you going to do with that when you leave here today? So there are 2 absolutes about personal development. The first is that it starts from within, and the second is that it never ends. So if you're going to become who you were made to be, it first has to start with in here. Who were you made to be? And the second is once you attain whatever you think that may be, you don't stop. Because the second you stop growing, you start dying. Potential is a never-ending thing. So we're going to go through a brief exercise. There were some bev naps that were passed out to you on your tables. We're going to take 2 minutes. And if you work for a company or lead a company or manage a company, I want you to think of who is the one person, a part of your organization that you see more potential in. And I'm sure there are many, but pick one that you see more potential in than what they are currently doing today, and they need to see it within themselves. And I want you to write that person's name on the front of that BevNat. Who is the one person, if you manage or lead or own an organization, if you're in any type of leadership role at all, who is the one person out of the many that you have that you know has more potential in them than what they are currently operating at today? They have settled. They could take on a larger role in your organization. They can make a bigger impact. And if you help them, not only will it change their company, your company, it'll help change their lives. Who is that one person? And if you don't work for that company and you're self-employed or you're an employee and you're just here networking today, write your name on that napkin. And then on the flip side of that napkin, I want you to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like a list with a dot next to it. And I want you to take that bev nap and I want you to fold it and put it in your pocket. Don't scrunch it. Fold it and put it in your pocket. And I want to challenge you when you leave here today to find 15 minutes in this next week, in the next 7 days. Find 15 minutes to pull that person aside and say, Tara, is it Tara? Tara, do you have a minute? You do? I want to talk to you about something. And let them know, first of all, why you appreciate them and why you're having the conversation. And then second, I want you to ask them, are you happy doing what you're doing? Do you see yourself doing something in a larger capacity here at TLC Consulting? And see what they say. Now, if they do, I want you to already have in your mind, it's going to take a little homework on your part, the 5 things that they need to do to start progressing in that direction. And I want you to write those 5 things down on that bev nap and slide it to them and say, I want you to do these 5 things. And when do you think we can come back together and talk about these? And have them agree to a date as to when that might be. And then come back and discuss it. And I guarantee you that that will change, even if they don't progress to be whoever it is you think they might be in your organization, that will change their life in some way 5, 10, 15 years from now, just simply because you took the time to identify an opportunity for them that maybe they didn't identify for themselves, and you cared enough to do something with that. Now, if it's you and you don't have someone to apply this to, I want you to think, if someone were having this conversation with me, what are the 5 things that they would probably tell me? And write those 5 things down. And if you don't know the answer to that, find someone who knows you well that you trust, a family member, a friend, a mentor. Everybody's got someone here that they look up to. Take them out to coffee and ask them, hey, do you think that I could do more than what I'm currently doing? What do you see me doing? What are some of the things that you think that I would need to improve in my life to progress down that path? And put your own plan together. What do you see when you look at yourself, your current role, your title, your career path? Do you see where you are, or do you see where you're going and what you can become? We go through this hamster wheel of life of every day, making the donuts. Anybody know who Sebastian Maniscalco is? Guy's a phenomenal comedian, right? Phenomenal comedian, right? So he talks about Chipotle. I had Chipotle last week for like the first time in like a year. Terrible decision. So I had to go back to a meeting afterwards. Awful decision. But I mean, you walk into these places and you go in and they're like, what can I get you today? Okay, bowl. Okay, chicken, steak, beans, gone. Right, next, right? And they go through these motions. I almost don't need this. I could just shout to you guys, but I think they're recording it. They go through these motions and they do that repetitively over and over, and then they get up and do it the next. Now, I'm not demeaning that job, but how different is that than what you or I are doing every day in our current jobs if we are not truly operating in our purpose and in our passion? It's no different. It's no different. If you're a manager, see a person as who they are, or you see a person as they are, but if you're a leader, you see a person as who they become. Do you see your people as who they can become, or do you see them just as they are, and you're meeting them where they're at instead of leading them to where they can go. As leaders, how do we invest that time in others to help them recognize their potential, encourage their determination, and help them establish personal accountability to achieve that goal? Investing time in others takes time. How many of you have more time than you know what to do with? Raise your hand really high. Right? Time is something that none of us have today. I can't remember the last time I asked someone, how are you doing? And they didn't say, busy. I hate that word. In fact, I'm going to give you guys another challenge. I send emails all the time to people, and I don't know where this happened, but all of a sudden, I get these responses back that will you remember when you used to say sincerely, Gene Jurgen, or, have a great weekend, Michelle Aiello, and you put your name there. And then it changed to best regards. I'm kind of like, all right, that's all you got for me? Best regards? It's not really your best effort. But then it got even better. So we're so limited on time that we just dropped regards and we just said best, comma. What does that mean? Best? Really? That's your best greeting you can give me at the end of a meeting is just best, comma. I mean, there's literally no effort put into it. Years ago, I made a decision to end every single email with make it a great day, because I hoped that if they got anything from the email I sent, regardless of what the communication was, even if it was negative communication, that last sentence, make it a great day, helped them to do something different that day that would make it just a little bit more positive. So I would implore you, please stop with the best, comma. I mean, it literally says, I'm too busy, I don't have time for you. Come up with something that is unique to you, even if it's just sincerely, because that is sincere. Best is not. Significance is waking up every day with the feeling that the work that you do will outlast you. When you leave here today, if you're going back to your job or if you go to whatever you're going to tomorrow, how will the work that you do tomorrow impact others long after you leave this earth? Will it have any impact? If it doesn't, you might need the challenge, are you operating in your passion and your purpose? Success is not built on what you achieve, but on what you help those around you achieve for themselves and the impact you have on their lives. This book, Halftime by Bob Buford, changed my life. He makes the case that there's a difference between chasing success and chasing significance. You see, you can be successful and not be significant, and that's a very lonely place to be. But it is impossible to be significant and not be successful. Are you trying to be significant in the lives of others? So that's great. It's all warm and fuzzy. Thanks for that motivational talk, Davin. That's great. How do we take that and now actually apply that to our business? So there's another book, Think Big, Act Small. So there is a difference between thinking big and thinking small, and there's a difference between acting big and acting small. There's a lot of people that drive really fancy cars, live in really fancy houses, and say that they do a lot of great things, so they're acting big. But when you actually talk about the difference that they're making and the impact that they're making and what their life means, they have a very small vision, very small vision. I'd rather come across someone who has a really big vision and lives a small lifestyle and is trying to do something to pursue that than someone who's living a really big lifestyle and just has a really small vision. So there's another handout that's going to come around here in a second, but I'm going to give you guys another homework assignment. So when you look at this, I'm not going to read through these, but you can these will actually be in your handout as they come around. There's an assessment that is going to come around. That's another homework assignment that you could either take back to your company or to yourself, and it is going to help you determine where do you fall in this matrix. So those who think big, right, and act big, lead with their chin. They combine talent and arrogance. They pursue big ideas, just ask all about the power, the money, the prestige. They're self over stakeholders. Strategy trumped by image. Then there are those that, well, they act big, but they think small. They're proudly independent, self-impressed. They come across as arrogant. They're enamored with their own views. I know everything. My way is right. They're small-minded. They have a limited vision. They are stable in their local niche business. Then there are those that are just trying to make a living. They think small. They act small. Maybe they're a sole proprietor, technician. They're content with a living wage. Quaint, but not scalable. They're not developing a team or a market. They're living for themselves. If you're in this room, hear me on this. If you are in this room today, you fall in one of two categories. I don't care what your title is, what company you work for, what your background is. You are either others-focused or you are self-focused. That's it. You are either focused on yourself and what you're... Some of you came here today just to network and pass out your card, and that's fine. But I would ask you, are you networking and passing out your card because you're hoping the passing to is going to call you so that they become your client? Or are you passing out your card because you believe you genuinely can help them and you want to sit down and find out what the issues are in their life that you might be able to solve? And maybe you can't solve them, but maybe you're connected to someone on LinkedIn or there's someone else in here that you need to introduce them to that can solve their problem, and it doesn't involve you at all, and that's okay. Because they met you, you positively impacted their life and you gained nothing. Or are you just handing out your card because you're hoping that they're going to become your client because you're focused on yourself? You are either others-focused or you are self-focused. Leadership worth following: humility, vision, discipline, team planning and execution, excellence, value, innovation, accountability, win-win. Many of you have read The 7 Habits. Focused on the future and serving others. We all know that sounds good. You're all looking at this, nodding your heads, going, yeah, that makes sense. But are we living it? Are we living it? There's an empty page on the back of that assessment that will allow you to actually log the assessment that you have. So you'll see on the questions, you're not going to do this today, this is a homework assignment. You will see that there are just a few questions, different categories, check a box. The little light bulbs is thinking, the guy running is acting on there. So you either think big or small, act big or small, and then you will plot that on the graph, and you will see, where do I fall in here? Maybe you're okay not being in this quadrant. God bless you. But if you are, I would argue that you are limiting the potential that your life has while you're here on this earth. I'm humbled to be up here, and I don't claim to be a subject matter expert on anything that I share with you today. I stand before you as someone who thought they were going to be one thing, and their life took a completely different opposite direction. And the only reason that happened is because I pursued one thing, and it was that I wanted to make an impact in the lives of others. And that was my anchor. And everything that I did, every job that I had, every task that I did, I compared that to that anchor. And if what I was doing was mundane, did not make any type of lasting impact, I cut it out of my life. And I said, forget the consequences, I'll figure it out. Because the impact meant more than the security. Does that make sense? Is this resonating with any of you today? So I have the opportunity to get up and speak to companies and different organizations on different things, but I knew that this crowd was going to be a little bit of a mix because there's some of you that were here that were saying, hey, what can I take back from this awesome Lunch and Learn and actually implement in my organization and my company and do all of those things? And then there's others that came here to network. So I hope that regardless of which one of those you fell into today, that you at least take something out of here that applies to you personally. And that if you are not 100% living within the purpose that you feel that you were created for and in your passion and why you get up every single day, listen, if you are one of those people that says the weekend is almost here, something is wrong. If you're one of those people that gets butterflies in your stomach at 3 o'clock because Monday is coming on Sunday, and you're not looking forward to going to work on Monday, something is wrong. Something crazy happened 2 years ago. 5 o'clock on Friday came, and I went, wow, the week's over? I mean, I was excited to go home and see my wife and kids, but there was kind of this bittersweetness to it because I really enjoyed what I do. At the end of the day, Friday, are you crawling across the finish line out of breath? Or are you so excited that you can't wait for Monday to come again? For those of you who run businesses and want to actually apply this tangibly back to your business, there's going to be a sequel to this talk. Gene Jernigan is the president of the Auburn Hills Chamber of Commerce. There's a lot of great chambers. They're all great, I will tell you. The Auburn, I don't want to sound like Trump when I say that. They're all great. They're fantastic. Right? I mean, really, they're the best, right? So, Auburn Hills Chamber of Commerce does a great job of being a great business-to-business organization, and it really feels like a family. The sequel to this talk about how do you actually put systems into place if you're a business owner, if you're an HR, COO, CEO, CFO, and you're trying to figure out, this sounds fantastic. Now, how do we actually adapt this to our company's mission, vision, and values? What competencies do we use? What are those one-on-one conversations? How do we put IDPs in place that aren't 6 pages long and bore people, but you just want like a simple one-pager that says do this? Maybe it's not a BevNap, it's a one-pager. This is an event that's open to you. It is not a networking event. If your goal is to just show up and network, that is not what this is for. There are plenty of events for the chamber that you can do that with, but this is more geared towards how do you put systems in place for your company. You're welcome to join me there. Maybe you heard this talk and you say, you know, Davin, I'm not feeling it. Just like that butterflies on Sunday or, hey, great, it's Friday, that should be a red flag to you. I mean, honestly, if you're walking out of here today and you got nothing, then I would check to see if you have a pulse. And I don't say that arrogantly, but I would just say, honestly, it would be impossible for you to actually be listening today and to walk out here not feeling some sort of conviction. But if this is you, I'm not feeling it. Here's an activity that I did as I was making my career change. I sat in a coffee shop and I took Post-it notes and I said, what are the things that are important to me in life? I knew impact was one of them. I knew my wife was one. My kids were one. Meaningful relationships with others was one. Some sort of, type of great career that impacts the lives of others. Of course, money, travel, flexibility, autonomy, all these things. I wrote them all on Post-it notes. And I looked at that, and then I ordered them and said, which ones are the most important? If I could take one and throw the rest away, which one would I take and which ones would I toss? And then I put that one first. And I said, okay, if I only had to pick a second one, and then I had to throw the rest away, which one would I take? And then the next one, and I ordered those. To this day, those are on my wall in my office. You can't read them, but they actually are in somewhat of an order of what is most important to me and what is last. And you can't read these, but if you were down here, it would say title, income, prestigious career. Everything else is more important than that. This is the book I mentioned earlier. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you get it. It will transform your life. One last slide for you. Maybe you say, I don't know what my purpose is. I have no idea. Davin, that's great. You talked about purpose, but I don't know what it is. Well, here's a quick exercise. You might be loving what you do, and you're great at it, and that's your passion because you're not getting paid for it, and maybe the world doesn't need it. You might be great at something, and you're getting paid for it, and that's your profession, but honestly, you don't love it, and everybody doesn't need it. You might be paid for something and the world needs it, and that's your vocation, but you know what? There's a lot of things that I love to do that people need I'm just not good at. I would love to be a basketball player. I was not as tall as Scott Muska. It could not happen, right? I lack 2 things, skill and ability, right? Where do these 4 things intersect? Where does your passion, mission, profession, and vocation intersect? And again, if you're an owner in here, how often do you have conversations with your people like this? And is their passion and are these things aligned with the job that they have, the role that they're in, and the mission, vision, and values of your company? You guys can find that on the internet or you can take a screenshot of it. But if you feel at any point in time that this was impactful to you and you have follow-up questions that whether they're related to anything that I talked about today or just in general, I am one of the most open and transparent people that you know. It sounds crazy. I give my cell phone number out to everybody. I don't say this boastfully. There's over 4,000 connections on LinkedIn. And I made a decision earlier this year that I was going to start on an endeavor that if someone connected with me on LinkedIn, I would accept it, and then I would send them a message that says, hey, listen, if we're going to be connected on LinkedIn, I want to make a very intentional effort to know who you are so that I could see what it is that I can do for you. If that means connecting you to someone else in my network or learning more about you, whatever the case is, great, right? But a conversation has to happen. If you're just connecting with me to build your network, don't connect with me, right? But if you want to actually have a conversation on how I can help you or who I can connect you to, I'd be glad to do that. This is my LinkedIn information. Feel free to look it up. It has been a pleasure speaking to you today. As great as I'd love to sit here and talk more, Dawn here is following me up. And I couldn't ask for a better person to close this out. So thank you guys. Hope it was impactful. Enjoy the rest of your day.